Hello, this is Joe Jasper. I'm going to process this picture at the end in Topaz Studio, but I'm going to go through my whole workflow here, starting in Lightroom, adjusting highlights, contrast, temperature, usually for something like a flower picture and occasionally people. I might bring the clarity down, little tweaks here and there, and maybe a little sharpening and noise reduction, tweaking some of the colors and saturations. I have this subject flower here that I am obviously going to want to set off against the background to some extent, both with the degree of detail in the flower versus the background, and perhaps some luminosity. We'll see how this progresses, and I probably want to go for a soft painterly effect here. There's a little noise reduction and sharpening going on. Probably should have chosen the upper flower, which was the focal point, but there it is, looking good. And maybe a little camera lens correction, and then take it into, I made a virtual copy first, and then take it into Photoshop. And in here, I just want to clean the image up a little bit. The clone tool is what I'm able to do, really detailed cleaning up. I don't like a stem coming right out of the top of my flower focal point. Just like you wouldn't want a signpost coming out of somebody's head. Taking away a few little distracting elements. I'm not sure how distracting they would be, and like these little leaves of grass in a artsy up image that takes away some of this detail anyway. But I might as well start with a clean image. The flower on the right edge is a little distracted by some of the background, so I'm cloning out especially the yellow flower to its right in order to really let that one subject flower be more prominent. And you can go back, maybe I'll provide the original. And so once that's cleaned up, we can take it into Topaz and work a little artistic magic. It would look good as a vintage antique, or it would look good as a very softened effect at the end, which I think we'll go for. But we can play with it. That's the whole beauty when you can step backward. So the first thing I do is duplicate, and then I looked at basic corrections to see, do I really want to hype things up or not, and I decided not to, but I did want to exaggerate the details, because I know that when I soften later, a lot of those details would get way too lost if I didn't do this first. So I did a little HDR color and pull that back a little bit, go into the Studio Vintage textures here, and then I took a spot brush initially to take out some of that effect over my subject flower, trying to preserve more detail there. I know I'm going to be doing multiple layers. I need to preserve some of my detail. And I also had an overpaint kind of effect there that I think is what I actually cloned. And here I'm just taking into watercolor 3 to soften it a little bit, and then adding the texture. So I'm playing with the textures here. thinking, do I want a border? Do I want to make this a kind of grungy, textured vintage? I play with the blend modes as well. And some of these, like that one, look pretty good and could be dialed back, as I'm doing here. Take an effect and just dial it back. But this is not really what I wanted. So first I'm going to put in a paper texture effect, I think, and adjust the details of that. Trying out a white border. It's not seeming to work out. This is one that I just imported yesterday. It worked fine for for my for a duck picture I had, but not working out well here. So here I'm putting a vignette on first to see if that'll help, and playing around with some of the settings till I hit the sweet spot. Always applying once I finish. That way I can step back. Trying a couple of other softening ethereal effects here. And there are some things like Bloom and Flower Girl. So here's Flower Girl, which also adds a little bit of lilac to soften that, counter that harsh yellow of the flower. And this is so soft. So soft too. I'm just dialing it back. I don't necessarily want it overdone. And then adding my signature. And that's the whole process. Then I take it out and save it.